Hey there, I'm Sashah Handal, baker, fitness instructor, and nutritionist. Welcome back to another episode of Alt Baking Bootcamp with Well+Good. Today we're gonna make a really yummy s'mores treat, but no campfire is necessary for this one. This recipe is really easy. It's vegan, gluten-free, and there's absolutely no baking necessary. So it's perfect for entry-level bakers and all types of eaters. So we'll start by first preparing the crust, which is super simple. I've combined almond meal, coconut flour, and a lot of cinnamon into one bowl. And what's really gonna bring out this graham-like flavor is by toasting all three of those ingredients over a low flame in a skillet on the stove. So while there's no baking actually involved, there is a little bit of stovetop work, but I promise it's not strenuous. Bring your flame to about medium-high just to heat the skillet initially. And then once you start to feel some residual heat from the top, you can turn it down. All of these flours are really light and delicate, so a high flame will definitely start to kill a lot of the aroma if you leave it on there too long or if you leave it on there at too high of a heat. I would start by just spreading out into a really even layer. If you have a bigger skillet at home, the thinner the layer, the quicker this is gonna toast. A rough estimation is about 2 to 4 minutes over this low flame, but you'll know that it's starting to get nice and toasty by the smell and the aroma that fills your kitchen. The almond meal is also much lighter in color, so it'll start to take on kind of a golden hue. And those are the indications that you're getting exactly what you want out of this toasting process. So while your flours are toasting, you can also simultaneously melt down your vegan butter. It should take about the same amount of time. We're gonna go right from the skillet into the bowl. You can pour that right on top. Again, using a spatula, because when you're only using 2 tablespoons of butter, you need every little bit of those tablespoons. And your last wet ingredient will be maple syrup. It not only acts as a binder, but it's also really sticky and obviously sweet. So I went with maple syrup instead of honey because there's a bit of coconut flour in this flour mixture and it's really absorbent. So you wanted something that was just like slightly thinner and a little looser than honey. And I like the flavor that maple imparts as well. So here I'm basically just making sure that all of the wet ingredients are being absorbed by the dry ingredients. It doesn't take a ton of mixing. Once it's all coated, you can basically transfer it into your baking dish. I love cooking sprays. They're just so easy. They make your life easy. I like to avoid all sticky messes, and that's what this cooking spray and parchment paper combination is gonna do. At home, you're gonna wanna make sure all the crust makes it into the dish, not onto the counter. Now that we've got all of our crust into the baking dish, I'm just gonna use my spatula to pat it down and kind of fill all the way up to each of the corners in this dish. It's not gonna be a super thick layer because really it's about the toppings here. If you think about when you're eating a s'more, the graham cracker is just the vessel for the melted marshmallow and the ooey gooey chocolate. So that's essentially what we're trying to do here as well, is just make like a nice thin layer, but it's strong enough to kind of hold up to all the stuff that we're gonna pour on top of it. After I just spent about half an hour patting it down into the baking dish, it looks pretty even to me. And then while you make your chocolate filling, you're just gonna put this into the refrigerator for at least 10 minutes, but that should be all you need to really have it set and congeal together. Okay, and now for the chocolate filling. I'm using quite a bit of cornstarch in this recipe because I really want a thick pudding-like layer so that it doesn't run over my pie, and you'll see that all come together over the heat. I don't want my flame too high to begin with because the milk will warm relatively quickly. So let's turn it down to almost a simmer. And I've combined equal parts coconut cream, which has a really high fat content, and almond milk, which is just your alternative to dairy. So while my milk is warming, let's talk about your cocoa powder and your cornstarch. I had it in a larger bowl initially, and I used a flour sifter to break up any clumps that were existing within the mixture. And then if you have one at home, it's not necessary. I'm gonna take a sieve and I'm gonna pour the mixture through that into the milk so that it's really, really loose and there are absolutely no clumps. If there are clumps while it's dry, then there will definitely be clumps when you mix it into the milk. I'm gonna do a little bit at a time and then kind of just pass it through with my spatula. And you can just see it's really smooth, clump-free, and then that's exactly what you want in your pudding, smooth and clump-free. So here we are. You're gonna start to see some bubbles towards the outside of your saucepan, and that means that you're generating heat at basically the appropriate amount of time. You don't wanna leave the stovetop while you're simmering for 10 minutes because you're going to need to continuously whisk. Once you've basically dissolved all of the cornstarch and cocoa powder, that's when you can add in your granulated coconut sugar and your chocolate chips. These are dark chocolate, so they're also vegan. Taste test. Taste tester approved. And you're just going to continue to whisk for about 10 minutes in the pot. Once you see small bubbles start to form, you'll know that it's starting to get to the temperature that you need in order for things to start to thicken. After about 10 minutes, you'll take it off the heat, but keep it in the pot. You're gonna wanna let it cool for just a few minutes before pouring it right into your pie crust. Fun. Look at that. So good. Okay, so you'll see after just a few minutes of cooling that she's solid, but she's jiggly and she's just like vibing in the bowl. And all you're gonna do is transfer from the bowl right into the pie crust, smooth it out, and then you pop her right back into the fridge overnight. So I'm gonna go widest part of the bowl into widest part of the baking dish. You'll pop it right into the fridge for at least 8 to 10 hours, and then we'll check on it then. To minimize the steps of this super easy recipe, I've decided to go with store-bought vegan marshmallows, but you can circle back to our previous episode featuring bean cream, in which we made kind of a marshmallow fluff or a whipped cream out of the water drained from a can of chickpeas. And it really, really lends well to this recipe. I actually did try it. But again, to keep it really simple, really straightforward, and super easy and not time consuming, we went with the store-bought kind. Normally, marshmallows are made with animal product, which acts as a binder, kind of like a gelatin. So vegan marshmallows aren't super easy to find, but I found these at Trader Joe's, and because they were readily accessible, I thought, why not? And now for the fun part. Don't be afraid to really get in there. You kind of want them to make a little indentation. And then I'm actually gonna break a few of these apart because it gets really sticky and I like that texture and how it looks on top. And honestly, the marshmallow is my favorite part of the s'more anyways. If you were feeling really fancy and you wanted to melt the marshmallows so it was very, very similar to a campfire s'more, you could just use a torch. But I would be wary of putting this in the oven because the heat would probably melt the chocolate pudding layer and it might become just like this big melty mess. But again, a torch with targeted heat right on the marshmallows would be great. You can almost tell no difference between a regular marshmallow and a vegan marshmallow. And I think that's really impressive. And also when you're trying to make a rendition of a dessert that's not already vegan. That's really important, right? I think she looks perfect. Ooh, you hear that crunch? That's fun. And then you'll see what I mean by like wanting the pudding to be a slightly thicker texture, because you want it to hold up to this. This is like the test. Can you hold it in your hand? Yes. I can't say an obscenity on camera, but this is so good. So insanely good. I'm trying to figure out how to get the marshmallow and the pie. Does anyone else do a little dance when they're happy with what they're eating? Every time. If you enjoyed watching me eat this and make this, you can find the recipe in the description below. And if you want some more recipes like this, please subscribe to Well+Good for more alt baking bootcamp.